Hi there. In previous videos we have installed Cognos and learned how to connect to it remotely, and in this video we will learn about the basics of Report Studio, how to log into it, how to navigate around so we can create reports. Okay, so to get into Report Studio, of course we have to sign in as the administrator into the Cognos Manager console. And if you're brought up to this page, the quickest way to open Report Studio is to click on this link here. If you're brought to a different page, maybe your home page is different or whatever, you can click on the launch drop down here to launch Report Studio. Then from this point we need to pick a package to start to pull data from. Your recently used packages will show up in this top drop down. Otherwise, you'll need to drill down into samples, models, and then pick your package from this list here. And they'll all have this icon in 10.2.1. Once you pick the package, Internet Explorer will open a new window and start Report Studio. We created a new report. And we're going to start with a blank report. From a blank report you can create any of these other kinds of styles. So we'll start with that. Once you know how to create a list, you can just jump right into that. But for now, let's start with the basics. Okay, so now that we have all of the tools open available, let's describe what they are. The menu button area at the top, this is very common. You have your new, open, and save, and then next to that is your cut, copy, paste, and delete tools, and then undo and redo. The next button here is a validate report button. This here will check for any typos in your syntax of your coding. When you hit the run button, one here, it will actually do a validation before you run the report anyways, but as you go along your different steps, it's good to check to see if you've made any syntax errors. This XML button here, this will show the actual XML code behind the report. This is very useful when you want to share your report with a different person, maybe a report at a different company or another Cognos user. I could basically create a report using this Go Sales package and save that report to a website, and anybody else can open up that exact same style and help troubleshoot or learn from it. This lock and unlock button, this unlocks more advanced abilities when you learn how to adjust them properly. Visual aids, if you want to show or hide certain things on the screen, you can use that. This here is your navigation area. So after you create many pages, a page can be thought of like a sheet in Excel. If you create many of them, you can navigate left or right or back or forward, up. This here's your filter. You can edit your filters for your reports using this button, and then the ones to the further to the right we'll get into as we learn more about them. Underneath that is your fonts, which is very common to all the other programs, so I won't get into it too much. But then you have your left, center, right, and justified alignment. And then you can also align your text within the page or the cell of your table, the top, middle, or bottom, and also changing the background color. And then if you want to change anything to do with your border styles, you can do that with these menu buttons here, and so on. We'll get into that later. Now, this here is your source information. So this is pulling data from the database, and it's organized in a way that the IBM or the Cognos designer thought would be most relevant for you. So as you can see, you can drill down into different objects here, and we can pull out those objects into the report. I'll show you that in a short bit here. That there is all visible in the source tab at the bottom of that pane. As we create a report, as we pull these items to the report on this side here, that will create a query, and then those data items will show up in this list. So instead of showing you the entire list of possibly thousands of objects, just the ones that you're using will be shown in this pane here. This pane here shows all the tools available for you to be able to customize and make your report look different. So that's this list here. And just below that is the properties window. This will allow you to view or change all of your settings on the object that's selected. So right now just the blank page is selected, so I have properties visible for the page body. Okay, so let's start to drag in some objects into the report. So we want to start with a list. A list is pretty most basic kind of information that you can pull into a report. So to do that, click and drag this list object into the page view. And when you do that, you see that this cursor is going to be blinking. That's where you're going to be placing the object within the page. And we can give it a name, beginner list, and it gives it a default query name of query 1. Click OK, and now it tells us here that we can drop items here to create new columns. So it's kind of a ghosted list right now. It doesn't have any information. So as an example, I can drop in a quantity field into that list area. Now the placement of the object is very important. Here you can see the cursor is to the left of the list, and it looks a little bit different. If I drag it a little bit this way, it looks different. But what that tells us is that when I have the placement here, it's going to be dropping the object into the list. If I move it to the left a bit more, now it's going to be dropping it onto the page, and you'll just have to trust me on that. It'll take a little bit of experience to figure that out. So as I drop that in, it creates one column with that quantity information. And if I drop in another column, such as revenue, I can place it to the left, or I can place it to the right of that. Okay, now I'm going to drop in one more, because just having quantity and revenue doesn't give us a whole lot of information. So I'm going to add in product type, and I'll drop that in there. So now for each product type, it's going to tell us how much we have sold, a quantity, and how much revenue that's brought in. Okay, so now that we have our basic list, let's run that and see what it looks like and what it gives us. So we use that run button, and the report quickly appeared. Now the first thing that we'll notice is that there's only a certain amount of objects on or a certain amount of results on the page, and we have this page down button here. So we click that, and we can see there's another object on or another record on the next page. Now this is a default behavior for Cognos when you report to an HTML page, and this is because one, it gives the end user a very quick experience. The results appear very quickly. And however, if you do have lots of rows and lots of columns, Internet Explorer can be bogged down by lots of data, and it can become very slow for the end user. Even scrolling up and down can be not a good experience. If you run into that case, it's quite easy to export this data right to Excel. The end users will like that much more when you have lots of data. So I'll show you how to change this. Let's say we wanted to show 21 of these records on one page. Let's go and show you how to change that setting. So we click on this drop down option to see the options for the run button. and then pick options. And here is the reason why. We need to set a value in here. If it's 0 or blank, typically it only shows us 20 per page, but if I were to put 50, now it'll show us 50 records per page. And because there's only 21 results, that's the entire set, so it doesn't give us the option to page down. Similarly, if I type in 0, that will be an unlimited amount of results in your web page. So again, it doesn't give us the page down button. Now I'm clicking on this three circles in the top left corner. This lets me select the entire object, and here we can see in the properties in the ancestor drop down, we can see that the entire list is selected. And the thing I want to show you is the query name. So this query, or this list, is linked to query 1. Now, if I wanted to filter on this to say that I only want to see revenue more than $1 million, we have to know how to find this query, and we do that by looking in this here. Now, one way to edit that query is to hover your mouse over this Query Explorer button or tab, and then we can pick that query 1 from this list. Now we have a different view where it shows all of the data items that we've dragged into the report onto the page, and here we can see on the right that we can create filters for this. And I won't get into a whole lot here, and just to give a quick demonstration of how a filter looks and works, I can drag in the revenue data item into the right hand field and say that it is greater than or equal to, say, 1 million. Click OK, and then hit run. And it comes back with no data available. Now there's kind of a complex reason of why that's working, and or why it's doing that. We'll go into that later, but if I were to reduce this number to 100,000 and rerun the report, it'll give us data. And here we can see that there are numbers greater than 1 million, so it kind of raises the question of why it did that earlier, and we'll describe that later. It has to do with aggregation, but we'll skip that for now. Okay, so that's the very basics of Cognos and how to navigate around. If I wanted to go back and to edit the report, I hover over the page and pick page 1. There is also another area called prompt pages. Let's say if I wanted the end user to select certain criteria so the report will show only information they want. We can start to configure that by dragging in a prompt page into this area and then double clicking it. We can give it a name here if we like at the bottom. And now on the prompt page we can add objects in here to say if revenue is greater than 1 million or 10,000, and you can give the option for that user to either type in a value or select a value from a list or a slider bar. But again, we'll get into that later. And so that kind of concludes our tutorial around. Hope you enjoyed it.